Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kelly Reed. I'm a communications officer at the Assembly of First Nations. Just a reminder, please, if you could put your media outlet or your organization in your Zoom name, that will help us facilitate. Regional Chief Cindy Woodhouse is here. She'll start with remarks in a moment, and then I'll help facilitate questions. And just a reminder, of course, to please, if you can keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, that will help us all, okay? So Regional Chief, I will turn it over to you now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here for such an important discussion today. Important developments, First Nations, appreciate you very much. But for many of you that don't know me, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you in person yet. My name is Cindy Woodhouse, and I'm the Regional Chief for Manitoba for the Assembly of First Nations. I'm also the lead negotiator with dealing with Canada and with other parties for the 40 billion compensation agreement for child and family services, Jordan's principle and system reform. I'm coming to you live from Treaty 1 territory. I want to thank the Treaty 1 First Nations and many of the Manitoba First Nations for welcoming me to their traditional 1 treaty territory. Today, the Assembly of First Nations we learned that the Government of Canada is seeking judicial review of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal decision on October 25th concerning 20 billion in compensation for discrimination under the First Nations Child and Family Services and Jordan's Principle. My goal and the Assembly of First Nations remains, as it has been for the 15 years since we've launched this action, to ensure that our children and families are compensated as soon as possible for the discrimination that they had faced. The AFN will also seek a judicial review to ensure the rights of our children and families are fully respected in this process and that they receive the compensation that's due to them. We will also continue to press Canada to examine all options, including seeking a negotiation resolution to get compensation flowing to our children and our families in many of our First Nations communities and across this country, regardless of what is happening through these legal processes. I remain hopeful that we can achieve these goals and give you my ongoing and complete commitment to safeguarding and advocating for the rights and interests of our children and First Nations families. I urge everyone to remember that there is 20 billion in compensation and more than 300,000 people waiting for justice. The AFN will now take the time to review Canada's judicial. We will be communicating with chiefs about these decisions and look forward to discussing this further at the Special Chiefs Assembly next month. So I think that's it for my remarks. If I can, Kelly, if you want to open up the call for questions, comments, concerns.
Thank you very much, Regional Chief. For those of you who would like to ask a question, you can use the raise hand function, or you can put your name in the chat, and I'll watch for those that have typed there. So, any questions from anybody?
In that case, thank you. That was the quickest press conference ever.
Oh, one question, Brett Forrester, CBC. Go ahead,
Hello,
Brett.
yes. I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. Can you provide us maybe with a little sense of what type of deliberations went on that led the AFN to file a judicial review of its own?
Well, certainly. I mean, I think that, like there was a deadline today and that we had to make a decision. And I know that the executive, we're looking at the best interest, of course. We have some issues with their remarks to the Assembly of First Nations, and so I know that we have to analyze those a lot closer once we get the full, once we get full comment on those details. As you know, that we just received part of the details on that, and we need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and making sure that we're making the best interest of First Nations, making sure that that we look at this very closely and in great detail. And so we're looking forward for the full decision. And in the meantime, we're safeguarding ourselves.
And just as a follow-up question, this case has already been going on for 15 years. There's already been quite a bit of litigation. What's your message to the families out there in First Nations communities who continue to now wait to see what happens?
Well, you know, every single day we're working really hard. We're trying to negotiate with other parties to make sure that our people and our First Nations get compensation. And I think that, you know, if we have willing partners at the table, and I'm hoping that everybody wants to, you know, I think there's one thing that's really clear is that I think everybody knows that these kids and their families, their parents, the children affected by Jordan's principle and their families, all these people, 300,000 people that are waiting for compensation, we need to get that money out to them as quickly as possible because they've been waiting for far too long. And I think that's if we stay the course that we're focused on these kids and the betterment of their lives, and I think that we'll all win. You know, AFN will win, First Nations will win, and especially more important is the people that we're fighting for, that they get justice and that they get compensated. And I know that compensation doesn't solve everything, but it's an acknowledgement of the wrongs that they have been through. They've been through too much for too long in many of their families broken apart. So we have to acknowledge that in this country, and we have to make sure that these families are compensated quickly and without delay and without people playing politics with them.
Thank you, Regional Chief, and thank you, Brett. I guess anyone else with any questions, sort of a last call for questions. I don't see any hands or anyone in the chat, so
Hi, sorry, it's Sharon Ryan with Windspeaker. I can't do the raise hand either.
Okay, go ahead, Sherry.
So, Regional Chief, I'm wondering, what are the timelines moving forward? What are we looking at for families having to wait even longer?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's not possible at this time, though, to determine how the legal process is going to play out. It could lead to a quicker resolution, or it could be tied up in the courts. So depending on the decision and how the different parties respond to it, I know that, you know, if we keep the best interest of the kids focus, that's the focus of it, is to get them compensated. And I think we can all agree on that. Hopefully it goes quickly.
A follow-up, how are you feeling? Are you frustrated with what's happening now?
Certainly I was frustrated a couple of weeks ago. You know, you do a lot of this work, you're on the road constantly, you're in negotiations, and you can't, you know, of course, those are settlement privilege to First Nations directly. And, you know, you work really, really hard for something, and you know, is everything perfect in this country? Absolutely not. Is everything, but I think that's a negotiation. When you negotiate and you do a good deal for First Nations people, and you want to find resolve for that, and then for that to be stalled could be certainly very frustrating. But what I can imagine how the people are feeling, that many people were very disappointed, because I know that they were looking forward to having a quick resolve on that, having processes set up so that their families would be compensated, they would be compensated, and that you know, we could finally say sorry to them for what they've been through. You know, we shouldn't have done that to many of these kids. Many of these kids I grew up with on reserve. It was really hard to watch that. And, you know, I was, you know, some people were lucky to have families, and others weren't, and they weren't with their parents. And I can't imagine how those people are feeling. And so for me, I think thinking about how they would feel, we have to try and find a resolve for this as quickly as possible, and don't play politics with people.
Thank you, Regional Chief. Thank you, Sherry, as well, for your question. Any final questions? If there's trouble with the raised hand function, you can go ahead and just speak, but I'm not seeing anything in the chat either.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we'll stop there. Thank you very much, Regional Chief.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.